fans and MFFLs, what is going on? We should be excited today. The Dallas Mavericks came into the day. This is the trade deadline we're talking about. February 8th, the Dallas Mavericks came in guns blazing, ready to make some things happen. Nico Harrison, Mark Cuban, whoever was involved, they handled their business today. The Dallas Mavericks traded for first, the trade that came through, the Dallas Mavericks traded for Daniel Gafford from the Washington Wizards, a guy I've talked about over the last couple seasons personally in my own personal conversations, because I felt this is a guy that just has some of the abilities and the traits we've been looking for from a defensive big, and just a guy that can help down in the front court in the low post positioning. Obviously, this was prior to us drafting Dereck Lively, a kid that I'm very high on, but I'm big on his ability going forward and the levels that he has to still reach, personally in my opinion, working with a guy like Tyson Chandler very closely, one of his mentors, being called pretty much his big brother at this point of his career. But Dereck Lively is a nice piece to go forward with and to build as your core centerpiece and anchor of this defense and just of that 5 position for the Dallas Mavericks. But adding in Daniel Gafford, who's 25 years old and still has some game that I feel like is going to pay major dividends for the Dallas Mavericks going forward. Because what Daniel Gafford to me personally brings is a guy that you're looking up and asking, what exactly is going to be his role on this team? We do know Dwight Powell has been a guy been talked about for years at this point, and now finally it seems Dwight Powell, and we're going to knock on all kinds of wood. Now, hopefully Dwight Powell is going to be nothing more than that energy guy off the bench going forward. Of course, it's going to be for another game. We play the Knicks tonight, but the Dallas Mavericks are starting to now build a solid front court. And me personally, in my opinion, it's easy to kind of pencil in some guys in the rotation and where you think they are probably going to be for the main, their main setup for this team. But me personally, I feel like you can't have too much size. Daniel Gafford is a great lob threat. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to come in. And we're talking about a guy with averaging 2.2 blocks per game. Daniel Gafford is nothing to be weary of, because this is a guy that I feel like he's going to be able to find his role on the court without Dereck Lively out there. And also, personally, in my opinion, I think this is a guy you can have on the court at certain junctures of the game with Dereck Lively on the court. Now we're talking about a guy 6'10", 6'11", somewhere around there. Nice size. He plays much closer to a 7-footer, a solid 7-footer. Just his skill set and his game. And I feel like you could, like I said, at the same time, you can add a Dereck Lively and a Daniel Gafford on the court at the same time in certain stretches of the game if we're looking for a defensive presence and just some rebounding help, because we've seen so many times where it seems Luka Doncic is completely having to dominate the boards for us to be consistent on that aspect of the game. Last game, I believe Luka Doncic with 18 rebounds, kind of goes for speaking for itself. And you're going to now be able to add in a guy like Daniel Gafford. Like I said, I believe he's averaging 10 points this game. We'll get into it in a second, their statistics and things like that. But just knowing, having these guys on this team, and in my personal opinion, we didn't get rid of anything for either of these guys that was going to be detrimental to this team. A lot of it is guys that were not really playing or anything. We'll get into these trade details, but I'm just very excited about adding Daniel Gafford from the Washington Wizards. Also, and when you think that's done, the Dallas Mavericks, a guy who've been talked about the last few days, they've been very interested in. We already heard the names like Kyle Kuzma and names like that, but the Dallas Mavericks, after the Daniel Gafford trade, made a big move for PJ Washington from the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte Hornets are a team, and I'm going to say now, they have so much young talent. This is a team that you're looking at a Brandon Miller. You're looking at a LaMelo Ball when he's in that lineup. They're getting Miles Bridges back. They have some guys that can make some things happen for that team. But throwing in the fact PJ Washington is a guy, I believe he's put up a 40-point game this year. And last game, I've seen some people kind of taking a look at his game. Now, I believe they played yesterday, ends up with 6 points. To me, that's going to be a far off, because what we're not expecting from a PJ Washington is for him to come in and be a savior of any sense of anything like that. So PJ Washington is going to be able to come in here, fall behind a Luka Doncic, fall behind a Kyrie Irving, and be that, I just want to say, that solid and consistent third scorer for this team. We do know at certain points of this season, you had guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. be those 30-point, 40-point scorers for this team at certain points. But I feel like PJ Washington is just more of an overall better player for what we're looking for at that position. Just being, again, sliding in as that third guy, more consistent, because Tim Hardaway Jr., when his shots are falling, the shots are falling. He can be lethal, and he's going to be the X factor in a lot of these games. but sometimes you're not going to be able to have a jumper fall in that game. And I want to see guys that can work their game around a few more different changes, being able to get to the basket when they can, knocking down a couple mid-range jumpers, just being able to knock down free throws and get to the free throw line at certain points. And I feel like PJ Washington is going to be big for this team going forward. Also, another guy, 25 years old, and I believe over the next couple years, we have Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington locked up for at least the next 2.5 to 3 years. So the Dallas Mavericks have put themselves in a nice space to be able to make some moves for the remainder of this season. Although I will say, let's be clear, it's going to take a couple games potentially for some of these new pieces, these new pieces to be able to come in here and find their solid footing and find out their role. And at the same time, we do have to be very clear. Jason Kidd is still the coach of this team. We've had so many issues and concerns when it comes to Jason Kidd coming in and handling, I guess, just these rotations, handling whether it's just game management, timeouts, things like that. So let's be clear. We don't want this to turn into a situation where you're looking at a team that has now added some real talent, but we're still finding ourselves beating ourselves whether it comes to game management, coaching decisions, or in game, just not calling timeouts and stopping momentum, or being able, knowing when your team is actually it's time to just ride the hot guy. We do know Jason Kidd is always going to have these questions, but it's just big for the Mavericks to be able to add some talent to this room, because at the end of the day, draft picks, that's always going to be a talk. The first round picks, what was the compensation? What did we give up? At the end of the day, you're going to be looking up and saying, you have a generational, and I'll say it again, generational talent in Luka Doncic. You have a superstar talent level player. I'm not calling him a superstar because Kyrie Irving, the skill set that he has, we saw what he did last game, 36 points. Kyrie Irving, his size, and again, the availability, that's always been a concern over the last couple of years, regardless of what the circumstances are of why he's missing some games. But with just having a generational talent like Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, just that superstar talent and skill set that Kyrie Irving does have, the scoring ability, the playmaking, you're now adding in a guy like PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, who to me, again, can play more of a dual kind of role, whether it's in the starting lineup at certain points or just being in that stretch with the Derek Lively, with your Luka, Kyrie, Josh Green, potentially Derrick Jones Jr., if the Mavericks are not able to add another wing in the buyout market, because I believe up to this point now, the trade deadline is officially over. But in the buyout market, there are some names. I believe the Pacers, they're looking to potentially, they could be getting off contracts of a guy like Marcus Morris, who is there. They could potentially look to waive him, and I'd be big on getting in on that. Also, I believe the Spencer Dinwiddie experience. We know what that is. Spencer Dinwiddie, to me, since he got traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the Brooklyn Nets, he's still been now at some point trying to figure out what exactly his space was, because I feel like he finally figured out what his job was with the Dallas Mavericks, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a new situation, and now you're pretty much starting over from step one. Spencer Dinwiddie could potentially be a guy that I'm looking to bring back, again, just for depth at this point. I'm not talking about coming in here and take major minutes from anybody, but I'm talking about just continuously adding depth pieces, because we do know Dante Exum, who was starting to improve and starting to find his own game with this team, has been missing some time with some injuries. So the Dallas Mavericks, again, throwing in Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, it's just big. Let's look into what these guys have done, what they could be for the Dallas Mavericks going forward. Talking about Daniel Gafford in year 5. This is the 5th year of his career that he's in right now. We're talking about a guy, a former second-round pick in the 2019 draft of the Chicago Bulls. Daniel Gafford is a guy that you've seen just develop and work on his game over time. And to me, what has me the most excited about him is if you're remembering the time that Russell Westbrook was playing for the Washington Wizards, the per 32 ratings and the stats that you saw from a guy like Daniel Gafford in stretches was insane. And I feel like that's going to do nothing but be duplicated, and maybe if not even improved on, even more so playing with a guy like Luka Doncic. And also, the playmaking ability that Kyrie Irving has. Just looking at, again, what he's going to be able to do this year, I believe for the Washington Wizards, he was averaging about 10.9 points, 8 rebounds, 2.2. Let's say that again, 2.2 blocks per game. And over his career, talking about, again, this is his 5th season in the NBA. He's averaging about 1.5 blocks per game. So this is a guy that's going to be able to be that presence that we're looking for. I guess when you want to consider it and compare it to what we've been dealing with the Dallas Mavericks as the front court, and more so just the 5 position. Having Derek Lively now, this is going, and now I'm honestly going to add in this to the equation, taking Richaun Holmes off the team completely. Now you're having Dwight Powell as that third man, that energy guy. you're now going to be looking at a more solidified, to me, rotation of what the big man position is, because now you have no excuse for playing guys like Dwight Powell over a guy like Daniel Gafford. Obviously, he's not going to be playing over a guy like Derek Lively because that's your first round pick, 19-year-old kid that showed some major improvements just from the preseason. You've seen preseason and summer league. You've seen just major improvements, and watching that grow, to me, what has me more excited, the most excited, is what I just told you about Daniel Gafford, but throwing in the fact now we're talking about we can potentially be getting a full 48 minutes of 5 position play from Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. And I don't care how exactly you're going to be intertwined in those minutes and the rotations and figuring out how they play together, I guess interchangeably, one hitting the court, one coming off the court. You're now going to be able to just get some, to me personally, consistent big man play, rotation play. And we're talking about, you're looking at a situation where now, what exactly is the rest of this team missing? We're just missing some guys that are going to be able to just fill in defensively. And we don't need these necessarily just defensive lockdown players on the perimeter. I need guys to just be able now to use their feet and be able to shield guys on the perimeter. Because what that does now is it gets a Derek Lively and a Daniel Gafford a little bit more opportunity to get themselves set as those defensive anchors. And the Dallas Mavericks are going to be a team to be reckoned with. To me personally, I feel like we could potentially add another shooter. Again, whether it's the buyout market or something like that, but adding Daniel Gafford to this mix in conjunction and addition to what you're going to be getting from a Derek Lively going forward, the Dallas Mavericks could not have had a better, I guess you want to say, trade decision as Nico Harrison and Mark Cuban, whoever the conglomerate was that made this decision. It was a perfect idea. And now getting into PJ Washington from the Charlotte Hornets. The Dallas Mavericks, and it seems now that this trade, we're looking at some of the, I'm not sure of the full details at this point yet, because I think they're still kind of trying to figure some things out. Apparently it was being reported that the Mavericks were still looking for a third team to possibly get involved. It was believed to be the Brooklyn Nets at this point, but I'm not sure if anything even was really rolling with that, because now, again, the trade deadline has hit, but the Dallas Mavericks were able to bring in PJ Washington from the Charlotte Hornets. This is a guy also in his 5th year in the NBA, 25 years old, and another guy that the Dallas Mavericks are going to have some contract control of for the next couple years to few years. So the Dallas Mavericks looking at this situation and saying, we have got to get better on the perimeter. We got to get better on the front court. And to me, PJ Washington is going to be more of a versatile player. I believe he's standing at about 6'7", 6'8", somewhere around that range. To me, it's just a more versatile player from what we were getting I guess you want to say more versatile play from what we were getting out of a guy like Grant Williams. And you're looking at this trade. Seth Curry, unfortunately for Seth Curry, this is the third time. Third time was not the charm. He has now been with the Dallas Mavericks and has in some way, shape, or form been shipped out, whether it's a trade, whether it's just letting him go in free agency. I have no idea why this exactly seems to work out this way for Seth Curry, but again, it's just circumstances. But Seth Curry, Grant Williams, I believe a first round pick, is it 2024, 2027? I believe it's 2027 first round pick at this point, will be sent off to the Charlotte Hornets. And now we're getting at PJ Washington again, 5th year in the league. You're looking at a guy, I believe he comes in his rookie year, averages 12 points a game. And up to this point, he's averaged no less than 10 points. 13 points this year. And now you're looking at a guy, again, I believe earlier on in the season, this was coming off the bench. He's had a mixed bag of whether he starts for the team, he comes off the bench, but he's showing some productivity in different roles. And to me, Derek Lively, to me, this is going to be a guy that helps out PJ Washington a lot. Because if you're looking at Derek Lively, at certain points of the game, we may have a guy like PJ Washington playing a little bit of a 4-ball for us. And to me, what that allows him to do is just be able to be quicker. To me, I don't believe he's the best defender or anything like that. But a PJ Washington, if you're working and you're figuring out where exactly the rest of the guys in the room, I guess on the court with you at the same time like to be, you can figure out that side of the ball. But to me, what PJ Washington is going to bring even more so is just that offensive versatility. We've seen so many times the Dallas Mavericks has kind of always been believed. When you're playing with a guy like Luka Doncic, the number one thing you're looking for is guys that can knock down open shots and be those 3-and-D type characters. But to me, I am never really a fan of that because we got so accustomed and used to watching a Reggie Bullock. We watched a Dorian Finney-Smith, and Dorian Finney-Smith got better over the last couple years, year and a half, couple years of his tenure with the Dallas Mavericks. at doing this, getting the ball and not completely being being frozen or freezing up when the ball comes to you, and a defender also runs that way, because we saw so many times Reggie Bullock would get the ball and he passes it right back to Luka Doncic, and it kind of defeats the purpose. To me, what PJ Washington is going to be able to do is a guy that just has more of a mixed bag on the offensive side of the ball. This is going to be a guy that if the ball is not falling from the jump, I guess you want to say from range, I can see him just being able to work himself to the line, knock down a couple mid-range buckets. And also, when you're playing with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, we're not expecting him to come in here and be the savior. We're not expecting him to come in here and be the number one guy, even the number two guy. I'm going to say at certain points, this could be a situation where if you're looking at PJ Washington having the ability to see, you know what, this is not Luka Doncic's night, this is not Kyrie Irving's night per se. I need to take over and show a little bit more of what my skill set is, and I feel like that's what he's going to bring more than a guy, obviously, like Grant Williams. I'm not going to crap on Grant Williams. It just did not work out the way that we had hoped and expected it possibly to, but this is going to be better for the long run. The Dallas Mavericks had just improved their roster so much over this last, over the last 24 hours, I'm gonna say last 24 hours, over these last couple hours, that now you're going to just be looking and asking yourself, what exactly are the Dallas Mavericks still missing? And what is the potential of this team going forward for the remainder of this season? I feel like now going into the All-Star break is gonna be perfect timing to get these deals done. So now we can sit here and just work on these guys, getting the chemistry down, Luka figuring out where guys like some of these new guys like to be, and working on the defensive end. Where exactly is going to be our placement? How exactly are we going to fit this rotation and these pieces together? I'm excited. I hope you guys are too. The Dallas Mavericks have made some moves. Once again, bringing PJ Washington from the Charlotte Hornets and Daniel Gafford in from the Washington Wizards on trade deadline day. The Dallas Mavericks handle business. Nico Harrison, thank you so much for actually doing something, because I was the one person I was going to say I woke up this morning with kind of no expectations, because at the end of the day, sometimes when we're sitting here as fans, and I'm going to say more specifically as Dallas Mavericks fans, we can kind of get ourselves into trouble by having some high expectations when the front office didn't really tell us they were doing anything, and then now all of a sudden we're disappointed once again. So the Dallas Mavericks, Nico Harrison, I'm not sure if this has to do with the new majority owners being involved or whatever it is. I believe Mark Cuban said pretty much they're letting him handle basketball decisions, but the urgency that we saw, that you cannot just downright waste another season with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, is just great to see the Dallas Mavericks got their, I guess you want to say, just got their heads in the game and start to try to make some moves with the rest of the Western Conference. I'm going to say Western Conference is very wide open still to this year, because the Mavericks are still, believe what, 7 games out of first right now, 7 or 8 games. It's still a long season, and we have some moves to be made, especially we're talking about seeding ahead of us and getting out of this play-in tournament, because I do not want to see the Mavericks in the play-in tournament again. Too many unfortunate and just unlucky things can happen to teams in these play-in tournament type games, where you're sitting having to bank everything on one specific game instead of an overall playoff series. So the Dallas Mavericks have made some great moves going forward. I'm sure Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving welcome them gladly, and we will see where this team goes going forward. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. We will keep pumping out the content. We will keep figuring out what the Dallas Mavericks are doing going forward, and I appreciate you guys. As always, enjoy the rest of your day.